5 minutes. I know, I'm terrible, terrible. I'm a terrible human. Anyway, I thought today I would show you some basic stuff because that's something that actually we haven't done really yet. So I thought I'd do that for you. So let's, before we get into the cakes, let's go to the cake land. It's a little cakey land. And let's, oh, look at that. I've been busy. I wanted to show you all the menus and stuff. So let's start off with, let me just get my chat open so you can see it. So I can see it, rather. Let's have a look. There we go. I was told I had a comment, but I can't see it. Oh, that's good. Thank you, Hyperdude. Now, let's go through these tools quickly. For those of you that are new to Dreams, this is where you search the Dreamiverse for stuff to stamp into your level. So let's, for example, look here. If I wanted to stamp another strawberry in, I'd go to the Dreamiverse. You can search using this. Let's see if anyone's made a donut that I can sort of use as reference. Oops, except I don't want to be looking there. I want to look in the Dreamiverse. There we go. Lots of donuts that people have made. There's the donut of power. And here we go. It's in my level. But we're going to make our own donut in a minute. So anyway, in here you can also filter and sort, as you probably already know. You can look for tags. And you can look for prizes that you've won, which are the things that you usually find in your home space. You can look for stuff that you've recently used. And yeah, all sorts of good stuff. Now onto the main bit. This is modes. No, sorry, tools rather. These are your assembly tools. What that means is when you're not in a mode, you're in assembly mode. So these are the modes here, but when you're not in any of those, you're in assembly mode. And your basic tool is a move, the move tool, which you can see there's a little move icon on the end of my imp. That means you can grab things with R2. The stretch tool you use for characters generally, although that may well be expanded upon in the future. The clone tool you can use to obviously duplicate things like that, but the special thing about using the clone tool as opposed to the shortcut, which is when you've got the move tool and you hold down L1, when you're in the clone tool you can do live clones by clicking this button. And what that means is that any clones you make with the live clone switched on will automatically update to match any edits made to any of the any live clones. Tweak is the same as using L1 and square on an object. Opens the tweak menu. Delete is delete, which you can also do with triangle. The hide tool, you use R2 when the hide tool is active, and anything that goes yellow is hidden when you come out of the hide tool. If you want to unhide everything, you just click this button here. The freeze tool works the same way, except that it freezes things so that you can't edit them. So that if you want to create a bunch of stuff and you don't want to accidentally move anything, just freeze it. I'm going to unfreeze that. Sculpture detail is super useful. If you found that you want to make something looser or less loose, but you hit the limit of how loose it can get, you can often use the sculpture detail to change the parameters of its looseness. Now also, when you go into sculpture detail, it's used for optimization as well, mainly. You can see here, some of my stuff is red. That means it's expensive. So what we'll do is we can go into anything that's red and we can reduce its detail. So if I click on it, you'll see it going bluer, and you can see it's getting looser to make it less expensive. And if I come out of that tool, you'll see my strawberry is now a little bit less detailed, but it's cheaper. Let's do that over here as well. In fact, I should do a little bit of this anyway. Now this cream as well, you can see is a bit expensive, so we'll make that a bit cheaper. And these cupcake cases are a bit expensive, so we can make them a bit cheaper. And what it also does is this option here takes the scale of the object into account. So if an object is big, it will allow for that, because obviously big objects need to be a bit less loose to look good. There, so we're just optimizing. Optimizing only works on sculpts though in this mode. So anyway, let's come out of that. So we've made things a bit cheaper. You'll see here as well, I've buggered up this cake. So let's fix that, shall we? And then fix this one. So that's all those assembly tools. Now we've got modes. We've got sculpt mode, paint mode, coat mode, style mode, effects mode, sound mode, test mode, update mode, and photo mode. Sculpt mode creates sculptures like that. Wab. I do a lot of sculpting, so you can see me do that all the time on this channel anyway. Paint mode again is for painting. You can just paint lovely things. There we go. What else have we got? Coat mode affects the colour and finish of things and also adds glow to them. So if I wanted to make this strawberry glow, I would select the glow tool. Oh, because it's grouped, it's making it all glow. Oh. And glowing things give off light, so and you just press triangle to go into subtractive mode, just like you do in most other modes, and it takes it away again. Hue, I'm not sure what that does, to be honest. Let's try it. I never use it personally. I think it just changes the hue of things. It's a bit like tint. What else have we got? Finish. So if you pick a finish here, you can change the finish of something. But you can blend finishes together. So currently this is quite shiny, but if I wanted to make it rough metal, I could just do a little bit of that, and it would change the finish. But we don't want that. Revert, I guess, just takes away anything. Any one of these, if you do revert, the revert is like a brush. It reverts it back to its original. Let's have a look. Style affects the flex. Oh wait a minute, I've ruined my strawberry, haven't I? Let's go back out of there. I've ruined it. What was it, do you think? Shiny metal? No, let's do shiny wax, because we want it to be a bit translucent. That's it, look at that. Oh, shiny. It's glistening and moist. Hello, is that Tap Giles? How do I set it to dreams? I tried doing that in my settings. I guess it didn't work. I thought it would do it automatically. Can I do that after I've done the stream? Hello, kitten. So this style thing is all about your flex. So you can make things looser, like that. You can make them tighter. Although, because I've used the optimize tool, I'd have to use that again to make that tighter. We can increase the impasto, which makes things kind of textured. It makes your flex 3D basically. Every fleck has a sort of 3D, you can have it flat or 3-dimensional, and using impasto makes the flex 3D. So you'll see here, if I turn it up, you can see the surface of the strawberries getting kind of fluffy, and if I take it away, you'll see it get flatter again. It's quite subtle because the strawberry is not loose. If it was looser, you'd see more of an effect. Comb will brush the flecks to go in a certain direction, which is more noticeable on some things than others. Ruffle will just rotate them randomly, which again you won't see unless you're on a specific loose thing. And then revert will revert everything back to normal as before. You can also change the fleck. So if I decided to change the fleck of the leaves, for example, I could do that. Ta-da! That's quite cool. Effects will animate stuff. So if I wanted to turn up the boil on something, it will make it flicker. See that? And then if we undo that and we do flow, it makes your flecks flow like a river. So that's good for doing water effects. Wave will make them wibble like waves, which is also good for water. Evaporate makes them kind of evaporate like that. It's kind of like flow but moving in a different direction. Throb will make them wibble backwards and forwards, wob, like that. Increase throb. Ooh. Now, sound mode is quite involved. It's used for making music and sound effects. Hello New York City, CNG. Hello kitten. If someone can tell me how to set my thing to dreams, that'd be amazeballs. I thought I had done it, but I tagged it as dreams. Anyway, so when you're in sound mode and you do search, you can search for instruments, sound effects, effects fields, and music clips. You can create a music timeline. Now there's two kinds of timeline in the game. You've got music timelines and you've got animation timelines. Now this is a music timeline because you got it from sound mode menu, but I can change this to an animation one just by clicking the number up here. So this is where this is a music one because it's in beats, and this one is an animation one because it's in clock time, which is in frames, I think. But you could, I mean, you can put sounds on an animation timeline, and I don't know if you can put. I think you can put animations on a music timeline. They're basically the same thing. They just have a different time, measured in different increments. Anyway, we won't go too far into that rabbit hole. Let me play sound again, so you can have lovely music. So you can search for all of these things. If you do the music tutorials, you'll find out about that. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Tools. Now these are cool. You've got move tool. In fact, let's put down a timeline again, so I can show you some stuff. So if I do, oops, if I go back into sound mode and I search for a music clip. Let's pick some drums. Put that there. And then pick some there we go, let's have some bass. I don't know if they'll go together. Oh, they do. How marvellous. Anyway, so what we can do is if we use the tools, which is here, a bit like the tools menu in sculpt mode or paint mode or whatever, we can burrow into a music clip which has been performed using the performance thing. Look, if we do that, you can see that someone's performed that bit of music using performance mode. Now if we stop time, we can go to the piano roll, and this is where the tools become handy. You can move things, look, like that, or you can clone them, or you can do that the same way as you do in sculpt mode and all that, and assembly mode. You got delete. Now the important one here is draw notes. If you want to draw notes into piano roll, you use the draw notes tool, and then you can put notes. Now I'm not a musician, but I'm sure Ed could enlighten you better than me, so I'm just going to move that. See, and I've added some notes. So that's the important bit. Oh, and you can record your own voice as well. So if I do, I'm not sure how, I've never done this before. Oh, you put that down there. Hello. Oh, wait a minute. Do I have to press that? Oh, there we go. I think it's here. Hello. Yes, yes, is it recording? I think it might be. And then if I stop it. Oh, there we go, look. Let's rewind. Hello. There we go. So you can record your own voice and put it in the game using the microphone, and then you can sample yourself. You can edit that. Let's have a look. You can change the start point. Hello. And you can turn up the speed.
Hello.
We can put some effects on it.
Hello. Hello.
We can, oh, let's have a look. I wonder if I can put some reverb on it. Is that reverb? Yes, there's the reverb.
Hello.
I'm not sure what spiciness does. I did change category to dreams. Anyway, we'll figure it out later. You're all here anyway. You've all found me. So anyway, you can make your own noises, look, and then you can clone them on here. Have them snap. And then you can even do, I think, oh, you can do repeat clone, look, just like you can in sculpt mode. So let's clone that. Clone that. Look, that's so cool. And then do that. Then you can tweak that and put it in loop so it loops and it annoys people for eternity. Why can't I hear myself? That's odd. Anyway, let's have a look. Is it because I messed about with the start time? Let's have a look. Slice. That's it. Oh, I see. Okay, let's delete them. Gosh, it's very powerful, this tool. I do love a powerful tool. Let's delete that, and then we can play it again. That's so funny. Fiddle with the volume. Yeah, I know you can loop them. I do know you can loop them. I'm just being a noob. Anyway, let's close that. So the tools are very good, but draw notes is the one that I wanted to point out to you. I'm not sure what any of this does. It's all very high-level musical stuff, but it's all very cool. Well, music snap. That's how snappy your timeline is when you're dragging things around. If you want short notes, you can make them short, the snap smaller. Sound gadgets are sound related stuff that you can use in your Logic. And you've got your play and rewind buttons there as well. So let's leave sound mode for a minute. Let's delete that awful piece of music that I created. Test mode is useful because it means you can be in edit mode, but you can also play it like it's a game, but in edit mode, which is quite good. So I could come out here and go, oh, I want to move that. Well, actually I can't for some reason because I'm in edit and test mode. But anyway, it's quite handy. Update mode shows you all the items in your scene which are saved as elements to the Dreamiverse. So if those scenes get edited, or those elements get edited, yes, that's right. When you're in test mode, you can open up your tweak menus, and you can check your values whilst you're playing the game to make sure things are correct. So anyway, yes, I have saved out some of my cakes, so I need to save up some more of them actually. So that's an update mode. That's quite important not to forget that. If any of your stuff does need updating, there'll be a bibble on here with a number on it.
Everyone loves taking photos.
Ooh.
Take a picture of that beautiful vista you've made. Or snap that odd creation you just found. Just to make sure your eyes aren't deceiving you.
So if you want to create a new cover for your creation, go to photo mode. And it'll take a lovely picture. Yes, anyway, so that's modes. Animate is almost like a mode that's used for, that's where you find keyframes, uh, action recorders, animation timelines, which I mentioned before, record possession, and also when you're recording these things, you can also record your mic at the same time by switching this on. Let's have a look. Gadgets. Now let's have a look at these. I don't know how much you know about Logic. Thank you, Tap Giles. I've worked very hard on these cakes. I do love cake. And since I don't eat a lot of cake, it's nice to be able to look at them. And these ones don't go off, and there's no calories in them. Anyway, so component, or gadgets rather, sensors and input is all about stuff that generates a signal. So as you may or may not know, creating logic is all a bit like electronics. It's sort of like a circuit, and to make something work you have to give it a signal, which is basically, well, it can be just 1 or 0, a digital signal, binary, or it could be usually a percentage or some other value. So for example, a trigger zone will usually by default detect characters, and you can stick one in your scene. Where's my character? Anyway, I'll just put one here, and then you can use that to trigger a signal, create a signal when it detects something. So when the character goes over there, that trigger zone will create a signal, but currently obviously it's not wired into anything. Tags are used to tag things to identify them so that trigger zones can single them out from other things. So I could set a tag, put it on my character. If I had multiple characters but only one of them had a tag on it, you could say to the trigger zone, just detect tags, and then only the character with the tag on it would trigger the signal. Wireless transmitters I haven't used, but I know they're really just for sending signals across between like circuits without using wires, because wires can get a bit messy. Your controller sensor is used to detect the button presses on your controller, which basically means that the buttons will create a signal for you that you can use to power something. Grab sensors detect when you grab things with the imp. So you could put an object. Let's put a little object here. We can make it grabbable. So I tweak that. Go to physics, physical properties. Make it grabbable. And then we can put a grab sensor on that by holding L1 to surface snap, and it will detect grabbing. And then what we can do, just to show you that it works, is we can put a keyframe which we get from animate mode. We can stick that on there. We can tweak the box again and make it glow. Whoop. Oh, not too much. There, now that state, that glow state, has been recorded in the keyframe, and then I can say grabbed. When you're grabbed, send a signal to say that you've been grabbed, and send it to that keyframe and turn it on, so that when we play scene and grab that, oops, in play mode, where is my box? There's my box. It glows, bing, because the grab sense is going, oh, this box is being grabbed. I better send a signal. So it sends a little signal down that wire, and the wire hits the keyframe, and the keyframe goes, what's stored in me? Oh, I know, there's that glow state stored in me, so I'm going to turn on that glow state, and it makes the box glow. Bing, 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 bing. Sorry. If this is all too simplistic for you, clearly you're way more advanced than I am. Now, where are we? We're still in components. So you got your grab sensor. Movement sensor detects when things move. So what we could do is... Now, why is my sensor gone? Did I delete that? What have I done with it? That's strange. Is it in a group? Oh, yeah. Right, I've just grabbed that. Actually, that's a good thing I can teach you. I must have been scoped into something. I was probably scoped into one of those cakes. So I'd actually created the box inside a cake group. And because when you put microchips inside a group, when you're not in that group, you won't see the gadgets. Rather, when you put gadgets inside a group, they disappear when you're outside the group. So I had to go into the group to see the gadgets. And then what I did was I grabbed the box, held L1 and pressed circle a couple of times, and I scoped out of the group, holding the box, and thus removed the box from the group. So when you're moving in and out of groups, if you're holding something, it will take that object with you and remove it from the group. Well, let me look at the chat. I believe gameplay thermometer measures calories. Yes, probably. I don't get rid of all of them. Gluten-free cakes, yes. They are gluten-free as well. They're everything free. I want to use a similar camera to the default, but have a turn faster, so it's nearly always behind the camera. For a car game. Now, for a car, if you're using the controller sensor has a built-in camera. Which is designed really for characters. So if you want to make a car camera, you need to add a custom camera to it. So basically attach a camera to your car, and if you stamp the car, well, let's have a look. For example, I've got a character here. I'm going to just go into there, and I'm going to give it a different camera. So laser scopes, those are quite handy. If you put one on your character, let's put it on there. What that does, has this gizmo, and the laser scope has a length, and you can have it point at things using this tagging thing, or you can just have it sticking out, and as soon as something breaks that, as soon as that beam touches something, it will create a signal. Use that to power things, so you can use that to have AI detect if you have this character wandering about on its own. You can use a laser scope to detect walls, and it will go, oh, there's a wall there, and you can then make that turn the character away from the wall, for example. You can use it for lots of other things as well. That's just an example. I was just talking about cameras, wasn't I? Before we carry on with those, let me just answer this question then. Although I'm not an expert, I know a little bit about a lot of things. So there's some people in the chat probably know more than I do about a lot of things as well. Oops. Right, now if I move this camera, put it over here where I want it. It might be like Resident Evil 4, look, we have it over the shoulder. Now, if I play the scene, I've got a camera fixed behind my character. Like, and you could do that on a car if you wanted to. And basically, that is overriding the controller sensor camera, which is obviously the default. I hope that makes sense. And you can obviously give this camera different qualities. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Let's go to edit mode. So if I go into here, you can use, let me have a look. No, we don't want any of that. We don't want any of that. This is cool though, the aperture. But I wouldn't use it on a character camera for a character because it would be a bit weird. But it does make a nice effect. It gives you depth of field look. So now the character's out of focus. Isn't that marvellous? Ah! Right, okay. Anyway, that answers your question, I hope. Well, what I would do is I would put you could put a block in the group with the character and put it on a keyframe and have the keyframe be bendy, so it's not quite. So it's put it on a follower basically, so it follows the character, and have a pointer that points at the character or points whichever way you want it to point, and then that will give you a little bit of looseness on the camera. Does that make sense? Anyway, I'm going to carry on talking about sensors. So let's have a look. So you've got your movement sensor that detects movement. When something moves, it will send a signal. I've never used the angle sensor, but luckily we have more info, and actually this is super useful as well. Let's have a look. Show more info. Bing! If I hover over that, it will tell us how it works. Detects whether the attached object falls within a predefined angular range. Set the angle to detect using the tweak menu or by manipulating the gizmo. Cone is the angle range you want, the pointer is the direction, and the rod is the object's actual angle. When the rod is in the cone, you get a positive signal. I see. Sort of. Anyway, I've never had reason to use it, but anyway, that's what it is. I guess rotation is similar. Oops. Let's have a look and see what that says. That's pretty much what the movement sensor does, only for rotation. Oh, I see. Use it on a steering wheel to detect how far and fast it's being spun. There you have it. Laser scope I've already showed you. Impact sensor just detects when things are being hit, which is quite useful for things like targets. If you want to fire a cannon at a target, you can detect the impact. Signal generators are cool. They just generate a signal of your choosing in a sort of variety of fashions. Switches are very, very simple. They literally just output a signal. Wait a minute, let me make that bigger. They output a signal when they're on, and that's it. You can turn them off. They're quite good if you want to have a microchip with a whole system on it. You just wire that into that chip and it will deactivate that chip when you turn it off without you having to go in there and muck about with it. Value slide is similar to the switch, except it doesn't output a binary signal, it outputs a value. Ooh, look at that. And you can change the value that it has. So again, if you wanted to say, I want to adjust the jump height of the character, but I don't want to have to go into that tweak menu every time, you can wire this value slider into the jump height input of the tweak menu, and then when you close that tweak menu, you can still adjust that value using the value slider. Have a go, Trymedo, and see what you can come up with. I'll be interested to see what you create. Oops. Now, what else are we looking at? So that's all of those. They all basically detect things and create signals. Logic's an exciting and wonderful world that most people don't understand. So, yes. So basically, these things generally tend to process. Some of them do output a signal. Some of them just process signals in various ways. So, for example, the randomizer takes a signal and outputs it. It's a little bit like a selector, except that you can randomize which one it comes out of, if you know what I mean. This just changes the number of ports. Wire up the signal you want to send to a random output port. I don't use the randomizer, to be honest. But that's what it is. The counter, we all know and love the counter. The counter can basically be used to keep score of something. So you can send a signal to add 1 to the counter. Your counter can have a maximum value. The default is 1. The most common use of a counter is to output a constant signal. So, for example, if you had a button, or a button that you had to press to open, like in fact, there's a tutorial for this that I created, or my team did. If you tap a button, or you have a trigger zone, for example, actually that's a good example. Let's put a trigger zone down. Trigger zone. Oops, we don't want it. We don't want to stamp it. Oops, we don't want to stamp it down. We just want to get rid of that. Let's put that there. Let's make a trigger zone. That will automatically detect the puppet by default. Now, if we wire the trigger zone into a keyframe, because keyframes are easy, oh, stop it. Let me do this. Wow. Ooh. Okay, we've got a glowing floor keyframe. Now, I'm just going to quickly put down a microchip, which is here, to make this a bit tidier. That's a good tip, actually. If something's in the world, but it's got a gizmo, and you drag it, it will move the gizmo, but if you put it on a microchip, it will put the gizmo back where it was when you first started dragging it. Let's put that there. Let's wire that into there. And actually, just for our own benefit, I'm going to put a line on the floor. Can you tell I'm a professional? There, if you stand in the circle, it will trigger the thing. Right, okay, so go into play mode with our horrible camera. See, look, if I stand in the trigger zone, it makes the floor light up. But if I go out of the trigger zone, it goes off again. Because it only outputs a signal while I'm in the trigger zone. So you use a counter. Let's put the counter over there. Let's delete the horrible camera. If we wanted that floor to stay lit after we triggered it, we put that into there and put that into there. What that means is when I walk into the trigger zone, the counter will increment up by 1, and because it's full when it's at 1, because it only has a target value of 1, as soon as it hits that target, it outputs a constant signal until we reset the counter. So we wire that into the keyframe, and then if we walk onto the thing, it lights up, but when we leave, it stays on. So if, for example, if you had a button that opened a door and you wanted to keep the door open once it had been triggered, you would use a counter. Anyway, that's all silly. Let's just delete that. Now let's check the chat again. What background noise? Oh dear. I didn't know there was any background noise. Anyway, where were we? Logic. AND gates require multiple inputs, and when all the inputs receive a signal, it outputs a signal. That's pretty simple, right? That so if you do A and B, A and B, it will output a signal. Oh, I see. No, the I'm so professional was just because of my rubbish, my rubbishy circle on the floor. An OR gate means if either input port receives a signal, it will output a signal. So either A or B gets a signal comes out of there. An XOR gate does something else, which I'm not actually sure about. But I'm sure that somebody who knows more about... I think what that might mean... Oh, somebody else explain it. I can't explain it. Unless we hover over here and do more info. Is it like an AND OR gate? The XOR gate combines signals to give you the condition. Do this thing if only one of these things are true. So the OR gate could have both signals and it would still output a signal. But the XOR gate means if it receives both signals at once, it doesn't output a signal. There you go, that's not that complicated, is it? The NOT gate's even more simple. It basically outputs a signal if it's not receiving a signal. So you can use a NOT gate as a signal generator. If you want a very simple signal generator, you just stick that down, and that is outputting a signal because it's not receiving a signal. As soon as you get a signal in there, that will stop outputting a signal. So that's cool. What else have we got here? Selectors. Right, this is quite good. This will... you can use this for your UI. So basically you have these options and you can say, okay, when A is selected, fire a signal out of this port to something, and then you can click on these. When this receives a signal, you could have two buttons, for example, and you could say, when button A is pressed, move the selector down one down the row and output one from the next signal port. And this one receives a signal, it will go up to the previous one. So you can have your buttons on those two input ports, and it will move up and down your menu items. You can also send a signal directly to one of the options if you want a shortcut to that option. So yeah, that's quite a handy one, that is. Did that make sense? Now the exclusive gate is a bit like a selector, except that the simple way to describe an exclusive gate is if you've got multiple exclusive gates, only one of those can be open at one time. So for example, if we name these Brian, because they need to be named the same in order to know that they're related. They're both called Brian. What that means is that when Brian 1 gets a signal, Brian 2 cannot... They're like gates. Signals go through them, right? But they can be open and closed. So if Brian is open and is receiving a signal, it means Brian 2 can't open. He has to close. That's why they're called exclusive gates. But if Brian 1 stops receiving a signal and closes, Brian 2 can then open. So they're basically saying only one of us can open at one time. So a little bit like you can use them like a selector. But the other cool thing about exclusive gates is that they can have priority. What that means is that if Brian 1 has only got priority 10 and Brian 2 has got priority 20, if Brian 1 is receiving a signal and they both have the same priority, Brian 2 wouldn't be able to open and let his signal through. But if Brian 2 has got priority 20 and Brian 1's only got priority 10, then if Brian 1's got a signal and is open and Brian 2 receives a signal, he will go, I'm more important than you, and Brian 1 will have to close his gate so that Brian 2 can open his. Now, you can use them. They are like the bouncers of the door to a club. Indeed they are. And what you can use those for is a state machine, for example, where if you've got a character, you only want it to be doing one animation at a time. So you might have an idle state, which is in Brian 1. So the character says, okay, I'm not doing anything at the moment. So Brian 1 is open and is playing my idle animation. But if I receive a signal from, say, the X button from a controller sensor, and I want to play my jump animation, I put the X button to Brian 2 to my jump animation, and I put 20 priority on there. As soon as I press X, it will fire through that one, play that animation, and stop it playing the idle animation, because you can only play one of those animations at once. Anyway, that was a bit of a complicated example, but that's kind of what I'm talking about. Signal manipulators are very handy for doing things like turning a constant into a pulse, or inverting a bit like a NOT gate, or you can do custom remapping. So for example, if you've got a signal that goes from -1 to 1, you can grab these and pull them down and then you can output the opposite. That's handy, isn't it? Like that. Oops. There. Like that. You can grab them and move them. So now if it receives a 1, it will become a -1. If it receives a -1, it will become a 1. Or I could say, if I receive a 1, make it a 0. But if I receive a -1, make it a 1. So you can do all sorts of fancy stuff. You can also smooth things. I'm not really sure. This is all very highly technical. I have used those. I used them when I created a vehicle, because when I wanted the vehicle to go backwards, it had to reverse the steering, because I was using a rotator and a mover, and I wasn't, you know, you don't, when you build a vehicle in a game, it's a lot easier to just use rotators and movers and have the wheels be fake. But what that means is that when you're going backwards, you have to rotate, you have to flip the steering so that it feels like a real car, otherwise your steering's reversed. So you use a signal manipulator to detect when you're reversing and then reverse the steering. It's quite handy. Yes, there's lots of secret shortcuts. Right, what's next? The timer. That's quite good for putting a delay on something. So it might be, I want to press X, but I only want the character to jump 3 seconds later. You'd put your X button in here, then you'd set that to 3 seconds, and then you'd say timer complete, send that to the jump animation. So that would put a delay on your jump. Not that you'd really want to do that, but it's a good example. It's like a simple version of a timeline. The calculator's cool because you can manipulate numbers. You can say, take input A value, which could be anything, and you can add it to B. Now B can be a set value, which you can set in here, or it can be a value from this input port here. So you could say, take the number from my accelerator and multiply it using multiply by the amount of boost juice in my boost juice tank. But that might vary depending on your value that's coming in your boost tank. So basically the more you've got boost, the faster you'll go. But obviously it will multiply. So if only you're going slowly, it will only multiply it by a certain amount. But there's all sorts of other numeric calculations you can do. You can say, if this value here is less than this value here, then output a signal. Here, the result. Or if this one is, take this number and round it up or round it down to the nearest whole number. Lots of exciting scientific things, like one of those fancy science calculators that somebody else had at school. Now, what's next? Nodes are very good for saying, okay, I've got this microchip, but I don't want to, I can't be bothered to open it all the time. So what I'll do is, if I want to wire something into it and I don't want to have to open it up, you can put a node in there. I only found this out the other day. And then it means it will put a little input node on the outside of the gadget, so that you don't have to go inside to wire things to it. So if you're making a self-contained little bit of logic and you want to put that on the Dreamiverse to share it, and you want people to just have to plug in a one wire to it, you can put a node in there, and what that means is that even when it's closed, people can just say, just wire into that node there, and that will save them having to go in and fiddle about with complicated bits. Now, what else have we got? Splitters. They're good for controls because if you've got a controller sensor, for example, and you're taking a signal out of the analog stick outputs up, down, left and right off of one signal. So what you might want is you might only want the left and right bit. Oh, let me turn that off again. I'll leave it for now. So you split the signal. Let me try that now. So let's have a look. In fact, you might even be able to see it here. If I take a signal splitter, put it there, and I wire the left stick into that, suddenly you've got X and Y, up and down and left and right. So I can then say, okay, well I just want left and right, for example, to go to a rotator to do my steering, and maybe I want up and down to do forwards and back, so I'll take them to my mover, which does my acceleration, and that's what you use a splitter for, to split the signal. Split the difference. Combiner just does the opposite. Depends what input you require for your gadget. Now, variables are cool because you can use those to store information. They're a little bit like the score gadget in that you can put a variable in your scene and it will just say, I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to hold this little bit of information. You tell me what you want me to remember and I'll remember it for you, and then you can pull it back out of me later. And in order to put things into the variable, in order to modify it, you use a variable modifier. So for example, you might want to say, do I have the screwdriver on me? And you'd say, okay, well you'd create a variable which is, am I holding the screwdriver? And then when they find the screwdriver, you would use a variable modifier when they press square and pick up the screwdriver, and that would send a signal to have I got the screwdriver variable and say yes instead of no, and then the variable remembers that your character's got the screwdriver, so that when you get to the screw that needs unscrewing, you can check the variable, and if the variable is yes, you can say allow the player to unscrew the screw with the screwdriver. Now the exciting thing about variables, if I put one in the scene, I'll show you. You can set this option, persist in dream. Now what that means is that if you've got multiple scenes in a dream, multiple levels in your game or whatever, Brian may pick up the screwdriver in scene 1, but in scene 2 is where he needs the screwdriver. But because you've set it to persist in dream, when you get to scene 2, you'll still be able to access that variable. So you'll still be able to say, you'd put another variable in that scene, I think, and you'd be able to call that variable and say, does Brian have the screwdriver that he picked up in the other scene but in the same dream? So that's very good for creating progression and stuff in your levels. Does that make sense? Yes, that's right, Tap Giles. You can use a node to keep your microchips tidy. Now that's logic. It seems so simple, doesn't it? Not long ago I wouldn't have had a clue what I was talking about. Now, move things physically around in the scene. Your gyroscope will keep things level, or it will keep them on a plane. So for example, if you've got a boat and you don't want it to tip over, you put a gyroscope on it. Tries to keep the affected object upright. This thing is a mover, it just moves things in an axis. Advanced mover can move things in multiple axes. follower will follow something. So if you put it on an object, it will move that object towards whatever it is it's following. Rotator rotates things. I feel like I'm going into a little bit too much detail here. But if you want to ask me any specific questions, these are all, you know, things that do physical things or put things in the scene or adjust them. Gameplay is where you've got all your stuff like checkpoints, prize bubbles. Your doorway is good because if you trigger that, it will end the level. And you can also use that to connect your scenes together in a dream. Auto guides, we don't need to talk about now. Global settings is good for things like gravity, changing gravity throughout the scene. That kind of stuff that you might want to adjust globally. Score is just like a variable, except that it also creates a scoreboard, which you can see in the Dreamiverse. Puppets, I'm sure you're well aware of. Cameras and lighting, there's all sorts of cool stuff in here, including fog, grading, sun and sky is fun. I've already got one of those in my scene, actually. Wiper's good for doing kind of cutting between cameras and stuff. Rulers is good for a guide if you want a guide of a certain size, but I usually use a biped because it's simpler. Connectors, you've probably done the tutorial, but you've got all these things that connect objects together and restrict the way that they move, which is cool. There is a connectors tutorial that deals with most of these. You can look at that. And these are all the sound gadgets which we already saw in sound mode. You can access them there as well. Guides change depending on which mode you're in, but generally you saw auto guides a minute ago. What that does is if you stick an auto guides gadget on an object, it will force that object to, for example, snap to the grid even if the grid isn't switched on. This is the grid. You can make it bigger or smaller. So if I grab something, you can see the grid there. You can make it bigger or smaller. Stay upright means that if I turn that on, I won't be able to twist and rotate this very easily. It will keep it to... Oh, it's because I've got the grid on. If I turn the grid off, I won't be able to rotate this cupcake because I've got stay upright switched on. If you do right angles, it allows you to twist things to right angles. Precise move locks it to an axis, but you can kind of snap it away. It's quite nice for moving things precisely, hence the name. Studio lighting is good for when you're modelling, sculpting and painting. It basically sucks all the light and the fog out of the scene and makes everything very evenly lit so you can see it from all the angles. And the floor guide is handy when you're starting out to give you something to get your bearings, like a floor plane basically. So I use all of those. When you're in sculpt mode, you've got things like surface snap as well. Like there. Let me have a look. If I go into this sculpt, for example, I can switch on surface snap and it will stick things to the surface. And if I put keep upright on, it will make them... see that the way that it rotates is because it's making it 90 degrees to the surface, because you're combining surface snap and stay upright. You've also got things like mirror. You see there's a mirror plane. Wab. I'm sure you've used that. you've got the loveliness of clipped mirror, which means that when they overlap, they kind of clip, so you don't get that weird overlapping. Kaleidoscope's always fun. Very useful for creating fancy things. Precise move again. You've seen all of those. Let's go out of there. Let's just delete that. We don't need that anymore. Oops. Show hide is pretty cool. For example, if you're working with connectors, it's useful to turn on X-ray so that you can see the connectors through the sculpts. This stuff is all pretty self-explanatory, really. If you've made something invisible so that it won't be visible in play mode, you can actually turn off preview invisibility so that invisible things which you've set to be invisible become visible, to make it easy to edit them. You've also got your thermometer here. If you hover over it, you can see things, and if you click on those, it will actually tell you when they're having problems. It will give you hints about how to sort them out. And also, this is quite a fun one. You might have done the coat style and effects tutorial. You can see there it turns off any effects I've placed on things using the coat style and effects tools. See how much less nice that looks, and then when I turn it back on, that's better. Oops. Now if I turn off the hover effect, you see when I hover over things you get this kind of outline and it makes things a little bit darker. You can turn that off there, which is quite nice sometimes. So that's that. And then you've got play and rewind. That's about it. You've also got all these options. Quick save. There's only one save slot on your local hard drive for each file that you have. So if you press quick save and then you quick save again, it will overwrite your previous quick save. But if you save version, you can save versions locally too. But what that won't overwrite other versions. And then when you've got versions, you can go to your don't save. You can go here and see all your previous versions, and you can roll back to earlier versions, just like real game development. Oops. Right, what are we saying in the chat? Studio lighting for adding colour to things. Yes, that's right, because it makes it a lot easier to judge the colour. You don't want your crazy redshift grading and blue sun messing with your colours while you're painting. Versioning is important to use in dreams. It saves a lot of time if you manage to mess something up. That's right. Yes, I would show you at some point. I'm not that familiar with them myself, but we'll do a demo of them at some point. So I'm going to make a donut because I'm bored of menus now, and you probably are too. So let's have a look. Planet of the Cakes. Oh, so delicious. No, actually I haven't finished these bits because look at this. This is a little bit on the uniform side. So I'm just going to quickly adjust this. Now I'm going to use the touchpad to bring up the color picker. I'm going to pick that color, and you see now my object is the same color that I picked. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a round brush, and I'm going to use surface snap to keep the brush on there. I'm actually going to make the color slightly brighter. So I'm going to go in here and make it a bit brighter. Then I'm going to make it a stamp tool. Actually, no, looseness. No. I'll have to do them separately, won't I? I'm going to do looseness first. So I'm going to turn the looseness up a little bit. Because what I want is to get the flakiness of the cakiness a bit more loose in the inside of the cake, so it's a bit more varied. Do you see that? It's like the crumb of the cake. Although I just messed up a little bit there. I didn't want to do the edge of the cake. I just wanted to do the middle of the cake. I'm going to do the bottom bit as well. Is it doing it? It's not doing it, is it? It's not doing it. Turn that up a bit. There we go. And then we just do that here. Gives it a bit more of a texture. Oops. There. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray paint. First I've got to pick that colour again. And I'm going to make it a little bit brighter. Then I'm going to spray paint. Soft blend, that's it. Oh, I'm going to make the opacity lower. Whenever I'm spray painting, I always make the opacity lower. Why isn't that working? There we go. So we're just brightening it up slightly. There we go. Because it's inside of the cake, it's not quite so cooked. You see what I mean? Makes it a little bit less artificial looking. I think I'm going to make that softer still. There. I did make that. Yes, I always forget about that shortcut. I'm going to do it on this slice of cake as well. Although I think I might have done the looseness on here already. I think I have. Maybe not on the bottom bit. Let's just spray paint that. Now I should really go into studio lighting here. Can you see? You can more easily see the difference of the colour. You don't want it to be too harsh, just very subtle. Oh, you know what I need to do as well? I need to... Do you see how sharply that jam has been edited? I'm gonna... Oh, look at that slab of jam. So I've just used the hide everything else button. And I'm gonna go into this. I'm gonna pick this red jam. I'm gonna do stamp shape. And I'm gonna just soften up this edge. I want to get rid of that hard edge, really. It's not... Can't really completely get rid of it now, but I can definitely make it better. And then what I'll do is I'll add some blobby bits. Oh. See, the soft blend is really useful for just adding a little bit of sort of organic wobbliness to things by just using a... Have I got surface snap on? Yes, I have. I don't want that. There. Isn't that marvellous? It's also a good idea to use the grab cam to just check from all angles, especially when you're using the DualShock, just to make sure you've got the right positioning. There. Now I'm going to do some... You could use negative soft blend to help. Yes, that's what I'm doing. That's exactly what I'm doing. So now I'm going to make some positive blobs to make drippy bits. But what I might do, just to have them oozing out slightly. There we go. Blobby bits. Everyone likes a blobby bit. Let's have that bit oozing out like a bit of jam. Ooh. There we go, look. There's a lumpy bit in my jam. Maybe it's community jam. I wondered what flavour it was. Community jam. Right. There, let's see how that looks. That's better, isn't it? Look at that. If we turn off studio lighting, we get the full effect. Oh, don't you just want to nibble on that? I need to do the same thing here, really. I will make a donut in a minute, I promise. It's recalibrating. Let's just do some negative, subtractive blobbies. There we go. Just to soften it up before I do the additive blobs. Because there's nothing more fake looking than hard edges. We're not making a spaceship here, kids. We're making a cake. A lovely, juicy cake. Oh. Yummy, yummy. Right, let's put some positive blobs. I love it when it oozes out like that, look. Ooh. I mean, it's not entirely realistic. It'd be nice if it had a bit of transparency. But you can't have everything, can you? If you just give it a waxy finish, it at least feels a bit translucent, which is good. Oh, look at that dollop. There must be a berry in there or something. Also, you'll notice when I put these blobs in, I use a slightly darker shade. Because when you soft blend that, it looks like there's a bit of cherry stuck in there or something. A lumpy bit in your jam. And I personally prefer a lumpy jam. Blobby, blobby, blobby. How long did it take me? I don't know, I've been fiddling with this for a while now. Look at that. Possibly a bit too dribbly, but I don't think anyone's going to complain, are they? Nobody's going to ask for their money back. Let's save this for a bit. Now, what we do need to do is we need to copy this ring of creamy bits and pop it on here. Creamy goodness. Pop it there. There we go. Just make sure it's central using the grab cam. That's something that's very useful for. And then we'll just scope into that. So let's just, we should really have scoped into the group of the cake before we put it down. Now I've got to check it again because I've moved it. But it's fine. And now we scope into the cream. Delete these three. There we go. And there you have it. Creamy goodness. I don't think we need this cake now. Because we've got these ones. Maybe I should, oops. Maybe I should just make 4 of those because it would just be nicer. There we go. Move them over a bit. Oh. I'm hungry now. I want some cake. Well, yeah, but the thing is, I like to work non-destructively. So even though there's a lot of stuff inside the cake that you can't see, I might want to reveal that at some point when I'm making my level out of all these bits. So, so I leave it in there anyway. And then if I do want to use that cake, if I want to expose the jammy filling, I can. Oops. Now, I did also promise myself at some point that I was going to slice the strawberry in half and create a sliced strawberry, but I haven't done it yet. Would you like me to do that, or shall I get on with making this donut? Kids, what do you reckon? Donut or strawberry in half? How do you select only one piece when it selects the whole thing? I'm not sure what you mean. This is a group. If I hold L1 and press X, I scope into the group, and now I can interact with the individual parts of the group. These cream blobs are a group as well, so if I scope into those, I can then interact with the individual creamy blobs. Now if I turn this on, it will make it more obvious. If I scope into that, that's an individual asset. Now I scope out and I'm in the group that contains that asset. And now if I scope out again, I'm in the group that contains that group plus these other bits. If I scope out again, I'm in the main scene and I can interact with that. Actually, I'm not in the main scene because there's another group. Actually, no, there isn't. I haven't put these in the group. So if I select these. Also, if you want to move something in and out of a group and you don't want it to move, you can turn the grid on to quite a high setting. Then grab what it is you want to grab and scope in. And what that will do is it will stop it moving. Top tip there. So yeah, this cake, this cake is a group. This slice of cake is a group. This intact cake is not, well, that strawberry needs to be in the group. So let's turn on the grid again. Select the strawberry and scope into the cake and scope out again, and now it moves as a group. I need to save all these things really as separate elements. Oh look, I didn't save my fix to this sponge cake. Although to be honest I don't really need it anyway, so that's fine. Should we make a donut? When I did something, you scope in with group at L1 and X, and you scope out with L1 and circle. You want to do the strawberry. Okay, let's do the strawberry then. Let's do a lovely strawberry. We can do that on here. So we're going to scope in. Now we're in the cake group because look, we've switched that on. I can interact with the strawberry. If I hold L1 and press circle, oh wait a minute, if I hold L1 and grab and move the strawberry, it clones the strawberry. I'm still holding on to the strawberry with R2. If I hold now L1 and press circle while I'm holding R2, I scope out of the cake group with the strawberry, and the strawberry's now in the scene and not in the group. Now I'm going to delete. Well, actually, I'm going to scope into the strawberry now, and I'm going to scope in. Oh look, see that's freaky. Blah. This strawberry's got a horrible mutation. Wow. Because those individual seeds are edits, they're warping strangely. But that's the power of dreams. Look at that, it's blending, soft blend. That is the power of soft blend. Oh, who needs polygons anyway? It's an alien strawberry. Anyway, I'm going to because when I did something it grouped all. It's quite complex, but once you get used to it, it's quite cool. I'm going to find a picture. In fact, I'll use my iPad. Give me a moment, kittens. I hope it's charged. Oh, I don't think it is. Okay, I'll unplug my phone and plug in my iPad because we need some reference material. That's not very nice, Dream Tinder. I'm going to put colour pick that. I'm going to do the oops. Look at that. It's amaze balls. Oh, we're going to slice it wonderfully using this negative sculpt. There, now we have half a strawberry. And we can still move that edit to correct it. See, look. Tend to stamp down the negative and then finesse it. Yes, you can do that as well. Very true. Now, because we've got the wonders of paint, we're going to paint it, spray paint. We're going to use snapped to surface because I'm using a dual shock and it's easier because it keeps it on the surface. I'll make that a bit smaller. Now we've very delicately painted this strawberry, so I need to be, oh, my iPad's switching on now. I'll be able to get some reference. I'm just gonna do some basic stuff. I'm gonna pick that colour off the end of the strawberry. Now the issue we're gonna have is not ruining the existing strawberry. See, look, I'm going to spoil those seeds, but I can repaint them again afterwards. I can repaint them, don't panic. And now I'm going to pick up that colour and do a bit of that. Because the thing is, the spray paint is volumetric, so I'm kind of going to ruin what I've already got there a little bit. But that's okay because, you know, you just got to live with these things. Bit of green. Now we're going to do some very pale, we're going to just do some white. Because there's usually a bit of white there. Now I'm going to use my iPad to got to remember the password. I'm going to use my iPad to find some reference material, which I highly recommend when you're doing art. If you're trying to make something realistic, then you really ought to, oh blimey, you really ought to get some reference. So I'm going to type in strawberry into the search engine, click on images, and there's loads of pictures of strawberries, and there is a perfect picture of the inside of a strawberry. Now we've already got the red, so that's good. So what we're going to do, I did make the seeds individually, but what I did was, let me show you. If you look here, I made a dimple first using a negative shape. See, I can move the dimple, and the negative shape used a slightly darker colour to create a contrast, like an almost subtle shadow. And then I took the same shape but positive, and obviously the dimple had a bit of soft blend on it. Then I turned down the soft blend and put down the seed in yellow to fit exactly inside the dimple, and I did it for every single one because I'm a natter. Right, so let's I did clone them, yeah. I made one seed and then I cloned it. So if I wanted to, I could clone that seed, clone the dimple, and then put a new seed. But you know, we don't want to do that. I'm happy with my strawberry the way it is. Now, let's paint. Painting. Let's choose a nice red. A nice juicy red. Let's go for this one. Make it nice and small. I'm just looking at my reference. I'm going to paint around here. I mean, it really is so much more like real art using dreams than any other sort of 3D art package, because you are I mean, I know you can do similar things to this in other packages, but this is pretty crazy how cool this is. Now, do I want to do that? I'm going to do a more yellowy red. So I'm going to use the colour mixer. Take that there a bit. Take that there a bit. And just do a bit of that kind of tanginess here. It's very subtle, I know, but right, let's do this. Bear in mind I am using a dual shock, so it's not quite as easy as it would be with moves. But, you know, needs must. And all that. There's a bit here that connects to that bit. And do a slightly lighter one. I don't want to make it too white because I've got to do these little stripy bits. What's everyone saying in the chat? It is complex, but it's worth paying. It's worth practicing. And there's lots of people to give you advice on the internet. I think those white bits actually lead to the seeds. Whenever there's a seed, there's a white bit that comes in like that, I've just noticed. So some of them are a bit fainter than others. But what I can do... There's a seed there and a seed there. There's a seed similar to there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just go down here. It's very shiny, isn't it? I'm going to tone that down a little bit. I'm just going to tone down some of these so they're not all the same. And I'm also going to do some looseness because it's not that shiny. Even when you cut it with a knife, it's a little bit rough. So I'm going to, just like me, I'm going to just quickly do that, turn up the looseness. You can see there that it's a bit looser. It's not that much looser, is it? I guess we might have maxed out the looseness. Oh no, there we go, look. There. So it's not quite as shiny. Can you see that? And what I might also do is just nibble away at it a little bit with a negative. Oops. But I'm going to have to be careful because when you cut out, when you cut out, it does use the colour on the brush. So I want it to be super, super subtle. I don't even know if that's going to work, you know. What I might do is just turn off surface snap and just subtly so it's just a tiny, tiny bit not flat, so it catches the light a little bit. I could even use a different shape. Why don't I do this? Curve tool's super cool. There we go. And now I can sort of make it follow the white bits because it's the same colour. Oh, need to Just be careful. Turn up the soft blend a bit. There we go. There. Just super, super subtle. See what I mean? Just make it very subtle. Zooming in. Oops, recalibrate. One must do that rather often. But once you're in the habit, it's fine. There, and now, if we rotate around that, you can sort of see a little bit of subtle something or other. Yes, exactly. Because it has to use the same surface as the outside, and the outside looks so scrummy, what I could do is use paint mode. I could go into paint mode. Let me turn that off and put surface snap on again. I could do something like that and do, you know, not that I will, but I could do that, and that would, I'd probably want to use the pencil. Oops. With the pencil tool, it's interesting. When you set your scale, it shows you the widest it will be, but it will always be. See, I could do that just to add a little bit of, you know, texture. And then what I could do, let's just back out of there, open up the tweak menu. Actually, no, I'm going to use the effects tool. Coat mode, wax, and I'm going to keep a rough wax because I want it to contrast with the shininess. The good thing about wax is it's translucent, so it lets the light pass through it. And then what I could also do is go into here and turn down the opacity of those, because you can do opacity on brush strokes to make them a bit more subtle. That's maybe a bit too subtle. You can even mess around with the looseness to make them a bit fuzzier. You can do ruffle. You can do impasto to make them a bit sticky out. I don't know if it really needs them, does it? It might be overcooking, over-egging the pudding. And what I probably will do is, oops, thank goodness for undo. There, half a strawberry. Oops. a bit shiny. Maybe we should turn the shyness down a smidgen. Let's have a look. Let's go in here, go to coat mode, go to the wax, which isn't as shiny, and just let's find a good view. There we go. There, that just makes it that little smidgen less shiny. You see the highlight is just a smidgen less intense. Oops. I probably messed something up there. I'm pretty sure I did. Apply finish. That's better. That makes it just a little bit less offensively shiny. And probably a little bit more realistic. There we go. Oh, oh, kitten. I was going to make a donut, wasn't I? Thank you, Dream Tinder. It's, you know what, detail is just about looking at things and seeing the difference between them. That's all. And you can go, I mean, I could add more detail to some of these things. But there's a certain level there you can draw the line. And you kind of need to be consistent across all your creations. Do you like my lemon peel? Do you know what? I shouldn't have let them overlap like that. That's a bit of an attention to detail thing. But what you could do here, top tip, oops, is go in here and turn down the drawing end or drawing beginning. That's better. So now it's not going through itself. It looks a bit more realistic. Little things like that will break your illusion. Because as soon as you see it, you're like, oh, that's not real. So, let's have a go. Should we do a donut or should we call it a day and do the donut next time? What do you think? Kittens. Oh, I'm going to make a platform game out of all these cakes. By the way. Let's just create one. Sod it. It's a good thing donuts are so easy to create in dreams. How big do you think a donut would be compared to a muffin? About that big? A bit bigger? I guess it depends where you go for your donut. What do you think? That big? Possibly a smidgen bigger. I don't know. Let's do it that big. This size seems pleasing to me. So let's pop that down. Well, let's just check that it's the right I think it looks like the right kind of... I'm going to use a different fleck. I'm going to use this fleck. Can you see the fleck? Yes. And we're going to use... What finish shall we use, kittens? Should we use a waxy... Just wax, not shiny wax. Maybe even rough wax. What do we think of that? No, we want wax. It's going to have a hint of... It's got sugar in it, so we'll have a hint of shininess. Now, obviously, no donut is ever that perfect. So we can mess about with it. Let's find a picture of a donut on the interwebs. Now, would you say donut with a D-O-N-U-T, or would you say donut with a D-O-U-G-H? I'll tell you what, the internet's full of really quite sad looking donuts. It's about the right colour, but it is a bit too perfect, so we're going to need to do some wibbliness. And you know what, I quite like it when my donut has a sort of a puckered ring, if you know what I mean. So I'm going to do this. Wab. Oh, it's got a dimple. I love soft blend. It's one of my favourite things in the whole world. Should we put that on? Now. I don't want it to soft blend so much. We're going to do a puckered donut. Do you know what I mean? It's got a slightly kind of sphinctery look about it. Oh. Calibrate. Oh, need to rotate it a bit. There we go. We can always move these slightly. We don't want it to be too small because we're going to use that hole for gameplay reasons. But it already looks a bit more realistic because it's not so uniform. Because uniformity screams fakeness. That's why people that have too much plastic surgery don't look real. Because they're too uniform. I'm not judging, of course. Oh dear. Right, let's do some Let's do some negative shapes. So negative, Kitty. Subtractive, rather. Just to make it a bit less, you know, a bit less uniform. We're adding non-perfection, imperfection. You know, like somebody dropped it and didn't tell anyone. 5-second rule. There we go, it's slightly wonky. We could even make that more subtle. So you can grab those. If you just hover the imp over the bit where it's affecting it, the negative shape, even though it's not intersecting, will still be grabbable, and you can just tone it down a little bit. Like there. Hasn't everyone seen the Sonic the Hedgehog thing on the internet? Nothing better than a fresh donut. Imperfection. Oh my goodness, that's the best quote ever. A Pandy Bups. Well, the trailer and the ensuing madness of everyone going, "What have you done to our childhood?" Oh, look at that. Right, what I'm going to do is... The reason I'm doing this is just to slightly squash the donut, because they're never that round, are they? Look how amazing soft blend is. There. Slightly squashed. Fresh from bakery. Let's move that there, but we want the whole to be nice and central. That's it. Slightly wonky looking donut. Just the way we like it. Oh. Now, you ain't seen nothing yet, kittens. Let me put my iPad back on. I need some colour reference. Right now, what we're going to do is we are going to take another donut. A big one. Ew. Ew. I'm on my sofa, by the way. I want to make that ring smaller. So it's thinner, like that. And then I'm going to make it... closer to... The hole needs to be a bit bigger than the width of the donut. Right. There is method to my madness, kittens. Got to get it right. So it's... Oh, that's it. Just a little bit there. Turn up the soft blend a little bit. That's it. Can you see what I'm doing? Then I'm going to position it like that. Make it a touch bigger, touch smaller. Pop that down. And it's sort of, because donuts have that sort of half and half equality, don't they? Where there's a sort of rim around the edge. And, oh. Oops, I'm messing it up now. I can't see what the hell I'm doing. I think that will do. I want to do another one, but this time it's going to be even thinner. So I want a really thin one. Oh. I hope you're not getting bored watching me do this. It's not the most spectacular thing, is it? Oops. Now I can even, there's the thin one there. Once it's placed, you can align it using the align tool to get it straight. But you can also use the stretch tool to adjust it, because I think I want it thinner than that. I certainly... What you can't do is adjust the soft blend after you've placed it. So there we go. That'll do. What I tend to do as well is when I make an edit, I usually do it a bit too much. It was Da Vinci. I think it was Da Vinci. Was it Michelangelo? It was Michelangelo, I think. Sausage. We've got some colour work to do here. We've also got a little bit of... I've noticed they often have a crease around the edge. So before I do the... in fact, I could do it at the same time. If I get myself a cone... and I switch on surface snap and I make it like this colour. Oh, can you see what I'm going to do? Can you? And then I'm going to do keep upright, but I'm going to do right angles. That's it. Oh yeah, there you go. So because I've got keep upright on and surface snap, it's going to keep that cone aligned to the surface of the donut. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just... Oops. Problem is, because I'm using soft blend, I'd actually be better off using a wedge, which is a shame because it's going to spoil the effect a little bit. Don't panic. Don't panic, children. Oh, that's not going to work, is it? How annoying. What should I do? I'm trying to think. Let's just do it. Let's do it. I'm doing undiscovered things here, kittens, so don't panic. Why is it spinning like that? I don't want it to spin. No, stop spinning. That's it. Do I want that? I feel like this is wrong. No, let's get rid of that. It's not right. It's not right, and it's not even okay. Maybe I should do the curve. What do you think? Can't use that. Curve might... curve isn't really right either. It's a shame I can't use the cone. Cone would have been perfect, but... unless I put it in paint mode. Do you see what I'm trying to do? Really poorly. Why is it doing that? Could I do it with a donut? Like I could try and do it with a donut shape like before. What I should have done, in fact. Where's that thin one? Is that the thin one? If I get rid of that one and I do a donut, let's do it your way. And let's turn off those guides. Let's do that. Right, let's just do keep upright. That'll be useful. Oh, look at that. Freaky, isn't it? I think you're probably right. Oh, I also need to be in that mode. It's like someone's nibbled on my donut, in a manner of speaking. Right, I'm going to make that thinner. Possibly as thin as it will go. Then we're going to make it, oops. Then we're going to make it, smaller. Then we're going to move it up. I'm going to make it a bit smaller still. I want it to be almost exactly the diameter of the donut. And then when it's more or less in the right place, we're going to do some magic. So because that donut edit is a bit, oh, that's it. Because it's a different colour, when we do soft blend, it will give us, ooh, look at that. Now, do we want it to soft blend that much? I don't know. It's not quite right, is it? I'm going to turn the soft blend down a bit. down a bit. Oh, 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 oh. I want a smidgen. Is that going to work? What do you think, kittens? Hello, kitten. How are you, Tanya? Cipher of Tia, I should say. How are you doing? What time is it there? You must have just got out of bed. I'm loving dreams. Well, I work on dreams, so I kind of have to love it, really. I do love it. I love it very much. It's mind-blowingly cool. Make some these dollies. I could make some doilies, yes. It wouldn't be that hard because we've got kaleidoscope mode. I'm getting frustrated, kittens. I guess we're just trying to make donuts, Cipher of Tia. Let's have a look. I'm just going to put that down. That'll do. I mean, it's not perfect, is it? By any stretch of the imagination. I'm going to just make it slightly bigger. I love the fact that you can make an edit and then move it. Don't you? Right. Oh, blimey. Right, I'm gonna spray paint it a bit using this colour that I already have. I'm gonna go and grab it again just in case off the cake because I want it to be that colour. Kick. I'm going to do snap to surface. We're going to do a little bit of soft blend there, and then we're going to turn down the opacity. Up, down, there we go. Is that working? It's almost not see-through enough. Let's turn that down a little bit more. All the way to the bottom. That's better. Well, I'm sculpting a donut. Can I use the stretch tool? I can use the stretch tool to adjust that ring. But the thing is, that ring is as thin as it's going to get, I think. But let's try it. Let's do it. The thing is, I've got to find that ring. And then I've got, oh, because it's a negative, it makes it a bit difficult to resize it after the fact, which is a pain in the butt. But what I could do is make that wider. Thing is also with the stretch tool you can't do uniform stretch, I don't think, although I think it does work on donuts, so that's handy. Have I just totally ruined it? Actually, that looks kind of better in a way. Okay, let's do some more spray painting. Handcrafted artisanal donut, popular with hipsters. It's a little bit bagely, isn't it? But we can do what we did with the cake, and we can put sugar on it as well. Do you think we should glaze it? We can just glaze it by doing this. Dink. Oh yeah. Oh, look at that. Yum yums. We could make it a smidgen less shiny, I think. Let's come out of sculpt mode. Let's go to coat mode. Let's go to the normal wax again. See, look at the highlight on the donut as I just turn it slightly back to normal wax, so it's a little bit less shiny. There we go. Now that looks delish. It is not a piece of cake. If I move it further into the donut, you could grab the top easier, then move it back afterwards. I could. To be honest with you, you've also got to think about, is it worth doing a level of detail? Oh dear. I'm not convinced it is, but oh. Is that even working? I guess it's the same colour as what's already there. What we could do is use paint mode and actually not. We could use paint mode. We could take that colour. We could use the draw flex. We could do a slightly paler, shade. I could just use that, couldn't I? Looks horrible. Oh, what am I doing? Don't worry about that bit. We haven't done the finish on it yet. Oh dear. Wait a minute. Wax. Let's do rough wax so it doesn't catch the light so much. There we go. That's not very nice, is it? Shiny wax any better? No. Okay, that isn't going to work. What I am going to do though is go into style mode and I'm going to ruffle the flecks. Now look at these flecks, they're kind of rectangular but made of blobs. If I do ruffle it will rotate them randomly and it'll make them look less uniform. So our donut becomes a bit more speckly. Now one thing we could do, this is something I did think of earlier, is to do that. Oh, stop it. Do that. Do that. Do that. Do that. Oh, I'm in a silly mood, sausages. I really do apologise. And then do that. That's the curve tool. It's super, super useful for doing anything from tentacles to tree branches. I love it. It's one of my favourite shapes in the sculpt mode. If I just bring that down there, and you can see there we can get a nice arc, which I can use with a subtle hint of soft blend. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just smooth that curve a little bit. It's not giving me much soft blend, is it? I can make it thinner. Oh, look at that. Now that's what we want. That is what we want. Make it much thinner. There. And then move that there. Ooh. There we go. That is what we want. So let's do a stamp of that, stamp that, and then a bit more of it over here. Why can't I see it now? It's so small. It's difficult to get a result from it. Let's just do it by hand. So let's grab that, bring that there. Grab that, put that up there. I'm going to just move that there. Gonna put that there. Put that up there. Good thing about this is giving us a soft blend at either end of the curve. So if we stamp that in place, we've got a nice seam. I don't think we need more than that. There. The only issue with curved shape edits is that once they're down, you once you hover over them, you can't actually see their shape. I don't know why. It might be a bug. There. It's a little bit. It's a bit unsubtle, but maybe we can just pull that out a bit. So it's a bit more subtle. Just a suggestion, really, is all we need. A suggestion of a seam. So it just because we've got shininess on there, we really don't need that seam to be very proud. You can just pull that out so it's barely visible, and that's doing its job nicely. Look at that. You're alright, Dream Tinder. I will. Okay. Cipher of Tia. See you later. Sorry, I was so focused there. Oh. Still got 13 people watching. That's pretty. You're pretty patient, kids. Right, so we've got a basic donut. Now we could make. Let's put. I think that's okay as a sort of basic starting point. We can clone that. We can make it. We can go into here. We can go into coat mode. We can make the finish a bit rougher. Rough. So it's one of those matte ones. You know those donuts that aren't glazed? An unglazed donut. Let's put a hint. Just a wafer thin hint of waxiness. Just to give it a smidgen of a highlight there. It's just got the very delicate. What I might even do, just because I'm feeling a little cheeky, is put a hint of impasto on it. Oh, look at that! Look, so it's just slightly rough. Look, look. Can you see that? Wow! If I do it really loads, you get a furry donut, but we don't want that. We just want a subtle hint of roughness. Because it's unglazed. But what we are going to do is we're going to go into paint mode. We are going to get a white colour. We are going to get a square, crystalline looking fleck. About the same size as a granule of sugar. We are going to use surface net, which I think is already on, yes. Actually, one thing I forgot to do is set the finish, which I want to be super shiny. Shiny wax. Bing. Now obviously what you can do is run your finger over the touchpad as you're doing this, and it will randomly spin them. Oh, my doggies are getting impatient. Now I'm just going to show you something. I'm not finishing that sugar yet, but if I just go into the painting settings and go to the fleck, you can turn up your impasto to make them look more 3D. See that? And you can also make them a little bit, you can ruffle them so they rotate. So you could actually do that using the ruffle setting, and you can turn down the opacity so they're a little bit see-through. So, but when you get to here, actually let's turn down the impasto a little bit. So that they catch the light, look, a smidgen. They catch it more if you turn up the opacity, but then they don't look quite so sugary. And you can just do that all over it and it will look sugared. Marvellous. Now, next time we're going to make chocolate ones, and we'll probably do a donut that has no hole in the middle. But I'm going to go now. Now don't forget, you can subscribe and follow and all that. If you're looking for me on PSN, I'm Ms. Kitty Powers. You can see me on the occasional Media Molecule stream, and obviously keep an eye out for updates and things. Subscribe to the newsletter at Media Molecule. Follow me on Twitter. That kind of thing. Ms. Kitty Powers. Follow me on Facebook. You can even find my video games if you go to magicnotion.com if you want to play Kitty Powers games. And I'll be back soon with more cakey goodness. And if you've got any requests, just let me know and I'll leave you with this beautiful strawberry. See you soon, kittens. Bye bye.